Hello students, welcome to my channel. Today, since I have already began about the chapter called like crafts and industries. So I have already talked about the industries in the pre-British period, how our Indian business and traders in fact dealt with the different countries and how our products were very much like popular in Europe country and the traders and merchants in fact at the time they gained a huge profit, and of course the quality also matters at that time. So how this actually our merchants and traders managed to dealt with the other countries, and then how their popularity actually spread all over the world. So let us talk about today in India how this some of the organizations actually established, especially we have seen that the industrial growth in India. Industrial growth in India has taken place on the two categories here I talked about yesterday. So here we have talked about the plantation industries, and second is machine-based industries. And in the machine-based industries, we have seen that there were many of the trade mill or textile this mill was actually established, and during the 19th century we have seen that the first cotton mill was actually established in Bombay, that is in 1854, and by 1900 we had around 84 mills actually established. So a very huge number of the mills. Okay, so most of these mills were actually owned by the Persian and Gujaratis only. So that is we can see, but this Persian and Gujaratis also, when they actually established this industry, they were not dealing with the Europeans only, because the moment the Britishers came into power in India, and then they stopped the import and export from here, whatever the production actually made by our Indian traders and workers, laborers. So those things actually almost at the point of breaking the bone of the business and traders at that time. So they looked for the other countries where they can do the trading. So however, companies stopped them for importing things and all, but ultimately these Indian traders and merchants, they found the other ways to deal with the other countries. Like example, we can find the China. Okay, so they were dealing with the China. So here in 1861, a cotton mill was actually established in the Ahmedabad, and in 1862 another cotton mill was set up in Kanpur. So most of the a cotton mill was actually established here, and then a huge demand it was. Okay, then people from villages flooded to the cities to work whenever there is any industry is set, okay, in the town and the city, so people will certainly will flock, and then population will increase in the city and town. And then we can understand about the migration, remigration, all these things are taking place when there is a big number of mills are actually established. So we can see that in the initial years, Indian textiles industry actually faced many challenges, and in most of the countries actually the infant industry was actually protected by the government by imposing heavy import duties. So that's why suppose you have a lot of suppose productions, and you need to supply it, and suppose the other part of the world, suppose they will charge you heavy duties, then heavy import duties they will charge you, then certainly you will have a less profit, means a profit you may not be gaining. So here that is the problem the Indian actually face. And besides, we find that the colonial government in India refused to protect the Indian industry. So that one also we have seen. So the most important phase in the growth of the Indian industry came during the First World War. So since I already talked about the World War, how Indian industries actually came up with the flying color, and during the World War, these Indian industries were actually supplying the material, whatever the supposed iron or steel required for the war and all. So they were supplying from here. So that's why you can understand the most important phase in the growth of the Indian industry came during the First World War. That is duration is given from 1914 to 19 18. So when the imports from Britain declined, okay, especially they were engaged themselves totally in the war, and due to the war, a lot of money was lost, and then the people also was actually lost, and then they were taking the our people from here. They are a huge number of people actually taken for the First World War, Second World War, and then this is the like a kind of like a supplier. India was means India usually we are the second largest population countries. So it means from India a huge number of armies and soldiers were actually taken to the Europe country for the battle, and then they fought this kind of a world war. Okay, so here we can understand. So and then we have seen that iron and steel industry also actually started growing at this time. So remarkably, progress was actually made in the field of metallurgy, that is the excellent quality of the sword. An example we have seen Tipu Sultan's sword. Tipu Sultan's sword is the excellent steel, and it actually bears the testimony to the brilliant craftsmanship. Okay, at that time. So the hard and a sharp edge of the sword could tear apart metal armors, and a high carbon steel called woods, woods produced in South India was used for making this sword. So in South India, this is the actually huge demand actually. It means a better and then very fine quality of this steel was actually produced there. And the example, of course, we can understand about the Tipu Sultan's sword. Such a way it was so that is the example we can see. So it means a high carbon steel. Okay, this is the very high carbon steel. So how this iron smelters, in fact, during the British period, how their lifestyle they were declined due to the heavy charge and banned them. So how this decline in iron smelting, we will come to know. Now see, iron smelting in India was actually very common, okay, till the end of the 19th century. Now, most of the districts, you must remember, most of the districts in Bihar and central India had smelters who used local deposits, you must remember, of iron ores to produce utensils and tools to daily use. So here, implementation of the colonial forest laws actually drastically affected the business of iron smelting, because most of the people, common people, in fact, they were entering to the forest and then cutting the trees and branches, and then they were bringing the branches and making the firewood. It means they were making the charcoal, because through the charcoal only they were melting the this iron ore and all. So here what happened, iron smelters could not collect wood because the Britishers actually imposed some laws. So here what happened, when the iron smelters could not collect wood from the forest, which they used to charcoal to start their furnaces and all, so they could not extract ores after the implementation of the forest laws. So they gradually they found no other ways. Okay, and then in some areas the iron smelters were actually permitted to collect wood and extract iron ores in some areas, but the heavy duty on furnace discouraged them wherever they were doing some kind of work, but every time they were actually victimized in some way or the other, and this is the things actually happened. So here what happened here, the colonial, by the middle actually of the 19th century, the colonial government actually started importing iron and steel from Britain. Now iron smiths used imported iron, imported iron. Then what happened here, to produce materials for daily use. By the beginning of the 20th century, you know what happened, iron smiths faced a new challenge in the form of competition, which came from the iron and steel industries established in India. So another challenge. Okay, the moment in India already started, then you can see that others are also face the problem. So Tata and iron steel industry, let us know about it. Now Tata and or maybe the Tata Iron and Steel Company was actually set up in 1907. So this is the very significant year. So on the bank of the Sabarnakha River, okay, Sabarnarekha River, at a place called Sakchi. So remember, so later rename it Jamshedpur. The factory actually started production in the year 1912. Establishment in the year of 1907, and I started producing 1912. Okay, after how many years? Okay, then during First World War, Tata Iron and Steel Company, that is actually short form TISCO, received a demand from the British government to help with the development of the Indian railways and to produce war materials. It may say when the railway came to India, most of the this railway track were actually laid by the iron road and all, iron material, iron steel material. So if iron is a suppose iron is not able to supply from England because they were facing the war and all, and World War and all. So at that time, India was the only the one way can. So our Indian this industry in fact has started helping lying the this railway track, and even in the warfare also this industry in fact started helping. So what happened here? By 1919, the colonial government actually bought here like up to 90% of the total steel produced by TISCO, and gradually the industrial class in India became very prominent. The moment more and more steel was actually started supplying to Britain, and when the Britishers were buying the iron from India for the World War, then this Indian industry, especially our this TISCO, became very prominent. And eventually they played a very important role in the freedom struggle. And during the freedom struggle, this industry in fact played a big role because they had their own things to survive, to maintain, and to give the job to the poorer people, those who were deprived of the different like areas from their land and property. Okay, so these are the things happen. All right, then you have the a case study on textiles. So here Indian weavers were actually known for their skill and quality of work, and they used a spinning wheel and a loom to weave cloth. And weavers lived in a close-knit communities. So there were villages where a large number of weavers would reside. And these villages actually were regularly visited by merchants who would buy their final product. And natural products like indigo, madder, and turmeric were actually used to dye cloth. Color was actually used. So prior to the British rule, the weavers actually contributed immensely to the pre-colonial economy, and Indian weavers were actually highly skilled and specialized in their crafts, and they provided stiff competition to the European manufacturers. However, the Industrial Revolution proved to be fruitful only for the British, while the Indian textile industries suffered a great loss. Okay. Then once the British actually established themselves as a colonial power in India, they monopolized the Indian market. Simultaneously, what happened? Weeding out the other trading companies such as the French and the Portuguese. So the British rules and regulations destroyed the Indian textile industry. Okay, and the weavers were the major victims of the decline of the textile industry. You know that once you open the mill, a lot of people will be engaged themselves for working, and suppose you stop them from working, you close down the industry, then where these people will go away? So they don't have the other alternatives to work. So that's happened. Okay. So you will find here what happened. The intricate designs and a pattern which were actually made on the clothes could not be produced in the British factories. So our designs, our skill that the people had, they were making every bit of clothes was different designs, which the British machine actually did not do. So their quality and their production were not that much popular compared to our Indian products, even though it was a handmade one. Okay. So you can understand. So therefore, Sholapur, then in Western India and Madurai in South India emerged as the new centers of the handloom industry. Okay, they entered into that. And most of the Indian weavers and craftsmen were actually forced to abandon their means of livelihood and go back to agriculture to work as agriculture laborer. And the increased pressure on land further contributed to the poverty of the country. Now you have to understand that India was not like a poor country. India sufficiently was, self-sufficient was presented. But then, because of the British brought the different rules and regulations, which actually stopped these people from bad to worse. It may say Indians, if you can see that Indians were actually sufficiently, they were rich enough, and before the British arrival, in fact, there were not a problem. In fact, yeah, problem like a small, some sort of war and all was there, but things that economically they were not that much poor as the British did. Okay, so therefore, most of the Indians weavers actually and craftsmen were actually forced to abandon their means of livelihood and go back to the agriculture. So they had to return. Otherwise, they were quite talented, skilled. So, but they have to leave all this and then they have to become the farmers and peasants. And that's why the growing peasants and farmers in India actually ruin the every areas of the people, and economically they became very poor. Okay, so the increased pressure on land further contributed to the poverty of the country, and some weavers and craftsmen went to work in the plantations of Africa, South America. So many of them, in a big group actually taken to Africa, then Australia, and in South America. Okay, so huge number of people went from India. It means India became like a supplier of the people. Like today, suppose if you don't study, if you don't do the hard work, and suppose our technology and our industry and our university will not be increasing, if the medical will be not be constructed, then this growing population will be creating the only the laborers. So the country will not increase. Growing population is good, but at the same time, education should be the only the means through which the people will become talented and skilled, and they will be utilizing their brain for discovering the different devices through which the country will become developed. And today we don't have the original product from the India, so we are every time we are purchasing from the other part of the world. Today, one small small device for that also we go to Israel, we go to Australia, we go to Poland, and we are buying. Why we can't produce? Because the government is actually making the people fool the way the education policy actually they have applied in India. That's why people of the remote areas and people of town and all, how much they are actually educating. So in spite of educating also, they are not professionals. So you pass your degree, you pass your MA, everything, but you are not qualified for any job. So other part of the world, people are actually qualifying for they are professionals, their work activity which they actually supposed to therefore they are permanently to exist their life. That is the other part of the world actually thinking for, and here we are only just keep on studying. Almost half of the life we are spending in the study, and we gained nothing. Rather, we should know the situation that population growth is actually reducing the shelter and food and all these areas. In that way, education, if will there better education policy, then you can develop your talent and skill, and you can invent the different devices from India itself. And for that one, government should give the support, where the government is not giving the support. The government is fooling the people. So this is the things are happening in India. So therefore, we need to know that how our education can support us to become a better country. Otherwise, we will be like a supplier of the people. supplier of the laborers from India, and it is happening because the more people, more population, less education, and that country will not become the developed country. Rather, it will become the third world country, and they will be there for the supplier of the people. And these people will be going, in a huge number of people will be going to the Arab country, Australia, Poland, or Africa, South America. As a laborers, they will go. What the respect and dignity they will have as a laborer? You know, laborers doesn't actually laborers they don't consider as it is like they have the respect and a right. That's why during the British period, you know, most of our Indians were actually deprived of their human rights. So human rights were not respected because we are actually laborers. We were treated as like a laborers. So as long as we are laborers, we don't expect that we will have the rights. So that's why Indian Constitution is giving us the 6 rights, which actually helping us for our future development. But today the government is monopolizing every things, and then on this education they are giving the less important. You know, providing the midday meal, you know, only to make you happy, filling the stomach, nothing else. You will not think of your future. You only fill up the stomach and that's all. But education is not at all encourageable area through which we are actually suffering for. We are suffering from this education policy. So I think as you grow up, you should understand what education we need to take, so that we can be a country like a self-dependent. Okay, so that is the here you can find. So the process is known as the de-urbanizations. When you find that people are going from one country to another country, it's known as the de-urbanization. Okay, so students, I stop here. So in the rest of the things you study properly, and then you make yourself equipped in this area. Okay, so thank you.